Hello and welcome to this live stream on Mad About Sports. We have Jaren joining us once again on Mad About Sports. But yeah, here we are to talk about India versus Afghanistan, which will be kicking start in another 1.5 hours. The Super 8 game, as you all know, two teams, especially Afghanistan, who have made the Super 8 as a big achievement for them. India have been unbeaten thus far. They played four games in which they won three, and one game was a washout. And today morning, you already saw some results going some big teams' way. So India will have to step up as well. India will be knowing that it isn't going to be easy. Super 8s can be topsy turvy, and you want to get off to a winning start. So yeah, before we get into the live stream, guys, check out our courses with Mad About Sports. I urge you all to click on the link in the description and join our courses because this is your best opportunity to check our courses out, and you can be a cricket analyst. Being with Mad About Sports, checking our courses out, and fill the Google form in the description. Our team will get in touch with you. So yeah, welcome Jared on the show. How do you make up this game? Because this could be a very close game than one can expect, isn't it?
Absolutely, I think you've got it spot on because it's not going to be as simple as just looking at Afghanistan versus India on paper because it's expected to be a spin-friendly track, and that obviously means Afghanistan's prowess is a lot more improved because they are a spin-heavy team, and I think obviously India has gotten their bases right as well. We've got some of the best spinners in the world, but it is going to be a spinner versus spinner battle, and at the end of the day, I think the team that plays spin well is going to be the team that ends up winning.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's one particular angle, especially when it comes to cricket in West Indies. But last 2 days, right, in Super 8 stages so far, we've seen two high-scoring games, right? It's like it's not the usual games where we have seen like 130, 140s. It's been around 180s. Yesterday's game was 190, where even the USA team came very close the later end. And today morning's game where West Indies took on England, yeah, West Indies scored 180, but England chased it on quite comfortably. So are we seeing a shift? Are pitches for Super 8 quite different from what we've seen in the group stage at least?
Yeah, I mean everyone was expecting it to be a lot more low scoring, right? And West Indies I mean in the last few years has been a spinner's paradise. Has been a very slow pitch. Has always offered up slow pitches. Now it is interesting to see how things have shifted a lot more. Like as you rightly mentioned, the US South Africa game where it was a 180 odd, and at that point in time, everyone rather 194, right? And everyone expected it to be a very good total, but then USA did come close, like you mentioned. And then obviously today, early hours, if you're watching cricket in India, West Indies were absolutely routed at home thanks to Phil Salt and that aggressive innings where he took apart the English the West Indian bowling lineup and then combined with Johnny Best. So it did seem like run scoring was easy, and especially once you're settled in, if you're able to play 15, 16 balls, and you've just felt like the player was in, and that is in a stark contrast to what you saw with West Indies. Like most of their batters you felt were going to were did struggle a lot more, I think, except for Rutherford, and then you probably had Brandon King who had that aggressive start, and of course Captain Powell as well. Aside from that, everyone else wasn't really scoring at a high pace. But I think a lot of it has to also do with the dew factor involved. Considering that it was a night game in West Indies, I think the dew really came
Yeah.
in and helped England, just ease the chase for England. But that's not going to be the case, obviously. Also, the fact that you're playing at a stadium that's not yet had a Super 8 game, so that is the reason why you would still probably believe. And I think the teams also, just about the way they are going to pick that do, from what we're hearing, just feel like the teams also believe it's going to be a turning track.
Yeah, makes sense because from whatever we've seen thus far, West Indies can be unpredictable in a lot of these occasions. It's a day game, so maybe the pitch might get a little difficult in the second innings as well. But let's talk about the player to player battle right now. On paper, India is much stronger than Afghanistan man to man, for sure. But let's talk about Afghanistan's bowling, especially Fazalak Farooqi. I mean, he did not play against West Indies, and they did concede 218 against West Indies. Now, how important is he going to be? Because his power play bowling has been incredible in this World Cup thus far. Yeah, it was one game was against New Zealand, couple was against some of the lower tier teams. But the fact of the matter is, he can be extremely effective if you give him the ball in the power play and make him take wickets up front, because that's where he can be lethal And we all know what Fazal Faruqi can do. He can maybe trouble Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, and put India in the back foot.
Absolutely, I think he's been able to get that the swing that comes in, and I think he's exploited the new ball a lot more than probably better than most bowlers in this tournament, and that obviously goes to show how important it is to take power play wickets. I think it also sets up the game for the Afghan spinners who come later down the innings. Like as a spinner, you don't really want a set batter, facing a set batter, and that's been the one difference that I think Afghanistan. That's probably the reason why you see this difference in Afghanistan. The way they have been playing, just feel like there's something very different about them from before. Where you felt like Afghanistan were relying completely on the spinners to do the job. But now with Fazal Faruqi bowling the way he has been troubling a lot of openers and a lot of top order batters, which means by the time the spinners are introduced, and that also means that the captain is able to introduce the spinners at his own pace, and he doesn't really have to introduce them early in the innings. He can take his time and then bring the spinners in when he feels like it's strategically right for him, which aids a lot when it comes to the Afghan players, and just feels like Afghanistan has got that little bit more of an edge because of the fact that Fazal Faruqi has been getting that early wickets.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a very very good point by you, because somewhere down the line, I believe maybe Afghanistan's best opportunity is picking up wickets up front. Yeah, you speak about the spin threat, but I still think India can possibly counter it much better. And if you want to really put India in the back foot, you will have to strike in the power play, because you let India, lose in the power play, and if you make them score 60 or 55 odd in the power play, then I think India will face it easier to take on the spinners in the middle overs. And I don't think Indian batters have really struggled against Afghan spinners if you look in the recent past as well. India have not really been a team who has really been put under pressure by Afghanistan as well. So that's one thing which we'll have to keep in mind. But let's talk about Indian battle lineup. Obviously, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli opening hasn't quite worked out, but maybe most likely because of the pitches in New York as well. Now, going into the Caribbean conditions, you expect any changes, or you expect Virat and Rohit to open again with the same batting order to continue?
Yeah, I think. See, I mean, you would have to say that yeah, Virat Kohli and Rohit both haven't really set the tournament on fire. But like you mentioned, New York pitch was a very spicy one. I think you didn't really see a lot of openers perform up to the mark, and I think probably the one game that you felt like okay, the openers did a decent job is where they had. I think it was Pakistan versus Ireland. Where you saw the openers do a little bit better job than probably the other few matches, and then you obviously had I was a USA versus Canada game where the Canadian openers did a good job, but then you did not. I mean, they did not play on the New York pitch. So you're right about that. I think things will be a lot more different in West Indies. We just feel like if they can utilize the Fazal Faruqi threat, then automatically that helps. And I think if you just look at the way India is lined up, it helps the Indian team a lot with Rishabh Pant. With Rishabh Pant or Shivam Dubey, Hardik Pandya. You're basically setting up the middle order in a lot better position when Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma are open. So even if they themselves haven't personally done well, and these are kind of players that
I
you
mean,
expect
this is where the tournament starts, right? I mean, ultimately,
exactly.
you can say the group stage was like more like a qualifier, and this is where the real tournament begins.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the test playing nations, traditional powers have gone through. I think Pakistan being the only exception. Pakistan, Sri Lanka, if I'm not wrong, being the
I know
only
New Zealand.
exception. So, and New Zealand as well, correct. So, if you look at it, you're right. This is where the tournament really starts to heat up. Where you did see a lot of good performances from the lower ranked nations, but now is where things are getting really serious. And just feel like Rohit and Virat are the kind of players that will come good at some stage of the game. And Rohit did have a good 50 runs, right, that he scored. So I think the question marks have been on Virat Kohli, yes, but then he's proved in the past that he's a very good opener in T20 cricket. And I think it's going to be a lot more easier for him in the West Indies than it was in New York, because things were a lot more difficult for with the new ball on a pitch which has got a lot of cracks, which was seaming and bouncing and had an irregular bounce. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a lot more easier. And you would want. I think Virat Kohli is someone who's perfect for the kind of pitches that you traditionally expect in West Indies, right? Where it's a little bit more slower, and the ball doesn't come off as quickly onto the bat. And even if it does, you just feel like Virat Kohli will be a lot more comfortable batting in West Indies than he would have been in US.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just talking about the team composition again. Shivam Dubey did put up a performance in the last game, but it was not convincing enough. Yeah, you can say the pitch also wasn't easy. Do you still expect him to continue? Because that's another option everyone is talking about. Because Shivam Dubey struggles against, pace bowling have been quite exposed, but I don't see Afghan really troubling him with pace. Yeah, maybe against Afghanistan is his best opportunity to score something big, isn't it? Because he had a good season against Afghanistan earlier this year as well. So maybe carrying some
Yeah.
happy memories. And if he can score big today, I mean, the whole point of carrying Shivam Dubey was that in West Indies he will come good. Nobody, nobody was even talking about Shivam Dubey in US. Everybody was looking at Shivam Dubey in West Indies and his role to tackle spin in the middle overs in West Indies. Because you already saw today morning in that game where Adil Rashid bought exceptionally well. Now
Yeah.
that is you see a lot of spinners coming into play, and even last evening I just felt like Keshav Maharaj bowled brilliantly. So I personally feel now that spinners are coming into the picture a lot more. Now players like Shivam Dubey, even for that matter, Surya Kumar Yadav, these lads will have a bigger role to play in the Caribbean shores than any other player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially today, considering the kind of spin attack that you're going to be up against, the Indian team will really be relying on Shivam Dubey and Rishabh Pant. Considering they're left-handers, the matchup goes in their favor. I think those are the two lads that they'll be looking at, because the ball is coming into them and helps them play a lot more on the leg side. I also feel like Shivam Dubey is not really suited for the pitches in US, but you really, I think he gives you still that balance in the team because you always got that extra bowling option and the kind of the way he balls, right? The strengths that he has as a bowler, I think it just gets a little bit more accentuated when it comes to West Indian pitches than maybe US pitches. You really didn't need him in US pitches because your pacers were doing the job for you. The frontline pacers, that is Siraj, Arshdeep, and Bumrah. But now in the West Indies, there might be a point in time where you need someone who is a little bit more lower paced as a bowler, and batters are going to find it very difficult for them to be able to hit through the line. I think that's where Shivam Dubey just adds a little bit more balance. I know there have been talks about someone like Sanjay Samson coming in for the likes of Shivam Dubey. Obviously, the two factors that go against Sanju is number one, him being a wicket keeper, and you already having a wicket keeper in the team, and he did not field a lot in the IPL as well. And secondly, he's not really a finisher for you, right? You probably would have to fit him where Rishabh Pant is playing or maybe Surya Kumar Yadav is playing, and that just pushes a few other lads down the order. I think Shivam Dubey is still the perfect player to play in that role. Maybe if you had a Rinku Singh in the squad, you would have considered, a Singh instead. But because he's a reserve player, I think your best bet is still Shivam Dubey.
I agree, and I still think maybe Shivam Dubey's fielding standards is something which we'll have to improve. He did not really field throughout the
I
IPL.
mean, there was an interesting stat that I'd seen where he dropped the catch of Rizwan, and then Rizwan ended up playing at a strike rate of 80 after that catch being
Yeah,
dropped. I think of 23 of 33 or something of that sort. So maybe it was planned, just
yeah.
maybe Shivam Dubey
I
saw.
heard a very famous Pakistani YouTuber say this was the moment Shivam Dubey was picked for because it was a very well planned drop, and that was a tactical ploy. Because imagine if Fakhar Zaman would have, let's say, that game would have been slightly
Yeah,
different. Maybe Pakistan
yeah,
would have been
absolutely.
informed because the margins are very
But I
small.
mean, yeah, I mean, it's a very Pakistani thing to say. I think a Pakistani fan thing to say
But
that
they're not
dropping
wrong.
catches
They're not wrong. If you
they
look,
aren't wrong. Like it worked out in the end. It worked out in the end. Maybe something that Tala taught him. You drop the like if you
tactical
played
flaw.
gully cricket, right? You would know where you're like if a batter is playing slow, you're like you don't let this batter get out because he might do end up doing more damage on the field than being in the dugout. So maybe that was
Yeah, I
planned.
agree. So I think that was a tactical drop from Shivam Dubey, and I
Yeah,
think they're very happy about it. But let's talk about Afghanistan team for a moment right now. We spoke about India's batting. Afghanistan's batting, do you reckon has been a little over-reliant on Gurbaz? Because the moment Gurbaz clicks, yeah, the team looks good. And Gurbaz has been scoring, three-fourths of the runs or more than half of the runs in all these games they played. And the last game when Gurbaz went early, team capitulated for 114 against West Indies. So Ibrahim Zadran is great, and even Najibullah is good, but Gurbaz have been their key player. Now, the moment you dismiss Gurbaz, and Gurbaz is going to face a challenge, especially against the Bumrah, Siraj, and Arshdeep, if these three places are going to play, if he can survive that and score runs, great. But otherwise, Afghanistan is all of a sudden put under so much of pressure because this is where I think Afghanistan's weak link is. That is their batting.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think if you just look at Gurbaz as well, he gives them that really good start, right? In terms of strike rate in this tournament, Gurbaz is I think the 12th best batter with a strike rate of 140 in the first 6 overs. and that too when he scored 62 runs. So that's pretty size. I mean, you'd probably consider that just in the power play he's scoring 62 runs at a strike rate of 140, which is pretty good a start. And then I think when it comes to Afghanistan batting as well, you need someone like a Gurbaz because they've got a few anchors there who take a little bit more time, who take a lot more time probably than some of the modern batters to get their innings started and to get at that cruising altitude. So that's also one of the reasons why Gurbaz has been so relied on, because it's not just that he's giving them starts, he's giving them quick fire starts, which puts the opposition under pressure, which throws the opposition plans for a loop. And then all of a sudden, as the opposition captain, you have to do something different. And then, the ball is in the opposition's court, and that really gives you a start. And
Yeah.
we've noticed this throughout. Teams that have won the power play often tend to do well in the match, and then it takes a mammoth innings or a mammoth impact from the opposition players to bring things back and get things back on track.
I agree, and I think that's where Afghanistan will have to look at other players as well to really step up in a game like this. Last game you saw, especially chasing a big score against West Indies, they looked all over the place. Yeah, it was an inconsequential game at the end of the day, but you know, to look all over the place right before a game against India, that could have certain dent in their confidence. But again, Afghanistan have played some mature cricket. You expect them to compete. Maybe they're not the favorites to win this game, 100%. They're definitely not the favorites, but at least expect them to compete in a better way. And if the pitches favor them, they certainly will compete. But let's shift focus to India's bowling for a little bit. Kuldeep Yadav, everybody is screaming out for his inclusion in the team because they just feel that it is West Indies now. You need that extra spinner in your team. With Jadeja also not having had a lot of impact in this tournament, you expect Kuldeep Yadav to make way, maybe instead of a fast bowler in that 11?
Yeah, I mean, from what we've been hearing, Mohammad Siraj is going to be the one who's going to take the fall, and Kuldeep might just play. India might go with three spinners, that is Akshar, Jadeja, and Kuldeep. So that could be the ploy here, because Rohit did hint that the fact that he's looking for a spin. I think a spin dominant attack, especially in the West Indies, or in the tournament itself during the selection committee, the selection committee press conference. So I mean, I wouldn't. I was very surprised that Kuldeep did not feature in the team. Right? I expected Kuldeep. I think a lot of people expected Kuldeep and Jadeja to be the players to come in, but India probably felt the need to have two all rounders and
Yeah,
Rahul
again,
Latin.
you don't want to expose your cards too early as well. Maybe this is the right time to bring in a Kuldeep Yadav, suiting conditions. And if you look at New York as well, we wanted an extra batter, we wanted an extra seamer.
Absolutely,
It wasn't really
absolutely.
bad to drop Kuldeep. And Akshar Patel did play a cameo against Pakistan. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Maybe Jadeja was a little questionable because he did not have any impact at all in the three games which India played. That's okay. I mean, again, maybe this is where Jadeja's role also becomes even more vital in the Caribbean islands where the pitches are going to hold, help kind of bowling a lot more. He's so used to bowling in pitches like Chennai, pitches like Rajkot, and in Saurashtra, or in Ahmedabad, where the ball does hold a little bit. So for him, these kind of pitches will be more ideal, and both for Akshar and Jadeja for that matter. And that's where if you have a Kuldeep, and if you remember yesterday's games, or even today's game for the matter, the wind plays a big factor in West Indies. So having spinners who can take the ball in and away is so important. And maybe that's the reason maybe India will be slightly tilted towards having a Kuldeep Yadav in the lineup today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, like you mentioned, right? I was going to say the same point, that just felt like India felt in the New York pitch that you just needed an extra batter, and especially a batter who can give you at least easily 4 overs, and both Jadeja and Akshay can do that for you. So now I believe they will probably look for that one pacer out, and considering the impact that Arshdeep and Bumrah have had, I mean, you can never drop Bumrah for sure. He's a bowling superstar at this point in time, and Arshdeep has done a brilliant job as well, being his partner. So I think Siraj has been the one who's had a slightly less impact considering the other two. So probably he'll be the one to take the drop, and then Kuldeep might just come in. And I think what you one thing that Kuldeep definitely brings onto the table after his evolution, or probably a revolution that he's created, is that Kuldeep has become a lot more potent even on tracks that don't offer a lot. Now he's, because the space has increased, batters can't really step down the pitch against him. It's very difficult to sweep him as well, because you're not able to get underneath the ball anymore because he's bowling at that pace. So that really helps. And I think what he's also done excellently well is increased his dot ball percentage. He's increased a lot more the kind of balls that you can't score off. And that was one weakness of Kuldeep, because you could earlier just milk him for runs, and then one delivery where he's trying a little bit more to get that wicket would probably end up being a boundary ball. But that has really changed because of his increase in pace. He's increased 6 to 7 clocks at least now, and because of that, I think that's the reason why everyone felt Kuldeep will be featuring and the kind of IPL that he had. But I think you're right about it now, especially in West Indies. I think it's become much more essential for him to play.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's one important factor which you mentioned about the space variation. Nobody talks about it as much. I think Kuldeep 2.0 has been really thriving on shorter formats with that pace variation. Even test format, for that matter, has become even more effective on flatter decks because of the
Yeah.
space variation, and he's been able to control batters more. Now, Hardik Pandya's bowling is such an important factor here, right, to play three spinners. And what did you make of Hardik Pandya's bowling? Obviously, in New York, the pitch did aid him a lot. You expect him to continue with that same bowling form? That really helps India to play that him as a third seamer. Does he give you the confidence there?
I mean, Hardik historically hasn't done well as a third seamer, but I think if you look at the bowling hierarchy, you probably look at Hardik as your fourth best weapon, or probably your fifth best weapon in terms of wicket taking. Now, one thing that really helped Hardik, I just believe, is the fact that the burden of captaincy that he had in IPL, and all the talk around him and all the controversies just died down because he's now playing for India. I just believe IPL brings out the worst in Indian cricket fans, and fair enough. The way he did shift teams was controversial, but now that that's died down, and the only pressure on the lad is just to perform well as a player. I think that's brought down the stakes a lot more, and I think he's really living up to it. Right, at least in terms of bowling, he's done a good job. But I think in West Indies, you probably look at Bumrah, then Kuldeep, then Arshdeep, and then Akshar, and then probably look at Hardik Pandya as a wicket-taking option. So that just means that even though he's not done well historically as a third pacer, because the pressure on him to take wicket is not as much as probably it would be if he was playing in India for that matter. It's just going to help Indian team, ensure that he doesn't they don't rely a lot on him. And I just believe Hardik the bowler does a lot better when the team is not relying on him to get a wicket. Where team is looking to use him as a player, to control the game, or maybe to shuffle the bowlers around. That's when Hardik Pandya is a lot more potent bowler, and I think that's exactly the kind of role that he's going to play in West Indies as well.
Interesting. But now, before we end the stream, we have to talk about the big impact players for this game. According to you, who are the players who can really make an impact in Super 8s and in this game particularly?
Well, I think I know while Rashid Khan has really not come to the fore yet, and that is not to say he's performed badly. It's just if Fazlak Farooq has been taking away all the headlines. But I think now in this leg, you'll probably see him feature a lot. I think obviously we've spoken about Gurbaz. I think aside from that, even Ibrahim Zadran, right? He's been a capable partner to Rahmanullah Gurbaz, and I think that's been the key for Afghanistan. So I think those are the players for Afghanistan, and then obviously when it comes to India, you probably expect the likes of Kohli and Rohit to finally, hopefully, give India a good start. And then you've got the likes of Bumrah and then Kuldeep if he plays. So I think those are the guys that I would really be keeping my eyes on.
I have a question here. What's Afghanistan's best chance of defeating India? Is it them batting first, or is it them chasing?
I think it's them batting first. The idea probably is to bat first, and because there's no due as well, right? It's gonna be an even Stevens game. I think the pitch is not gonna change much in the 40 overs that they play. So hopefully the idea will be to get a fighting total, maybe depending on the pitch, maybe something around 160 to 180, and then choke the Indian batters using spin. Hopefully get a few early wickets with Fazlak Farooqi. It's
Yeah,
going to be interesting to see how he performs, considering it's a day game and there's not going to be much aid with the ball moving around. And then you're probably hoping that the likes of Rashid Khan and all the other spinners in the list come through, and then that is probably where India is going to feel the if they lose a few wickets early, and then Indian team just goes into that little bit of a shell. I think that's where Afghanistan has their best opportunity.
absolutely. I think that's where I think Afghanistan will be potent as well. Make the spin come into play. Make sure that pitch is a little more slowy and a little more stoppy, where Indian batters will struggle. I personally think Rashid will be a factor, but more than Rashid, I think Noor Ahmed also could be a massive factor with Nabi. So if India can play spin well, then India right on top. And if it's a flat deck, I think India are strong favorites to win this without a doubt. Because on a flatter deck, India will be more potent with their seamers being even more potent. And Bumrah will be a factor here once again. I think Bumrah's threat against Afghanistan batters, if Afghanistan batters can play Bumrah out well, then it's going to be pretty easy. We not even speak about Bumrah throughout his life because he's been such an important factor for this team as well. I mean, he's been the important factor more than anybody else. If you look at the 3 games we have played, so I hope Bumrah continues with his form alongside Arshdeep, who's been very important in picking up wickets. That's about it from us. Thank you, Jaren, for joining once again. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you really did, share and like, and also comment down what are your thoughts about this game. And also check out our course once again with Marabout. The link is there in the description. Have a good time, all of you. See you all soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys.